The U.S. Meat Export Federation commissioned a study to quantify the value red meat exports return to U.S. corn producers. World Perspective Senior Analyst Dave Juday has more details.
Agriculture is one big industry, and what we tried to do in this report is looking over things, see how red meat exports affect the price of a bushel of corn, the amount of corn that's used, how it affects soybean meal usage, how DDGs that are used by renewable fuels actually rely on red meat exports as well to keep their margins up. We did rely on the USDA baseline projections. Their projection was that corn use over the next 10 years for feed for domestic livestock, between 12 and 10% of that being exported through red meat, will grow 17%. Food use will go down 2%, and biofuel use will go down 3%. So clearly, what's driving the market is feed use and herd expansion, and what's driving that is exports. 1 out of every 3 additional pounds of U.S. beef produced over the next 10 years will go to the export market. 1 out of every 2.75 pounds of additional pork produced over the next 10 years will also go to the export market. If you look back and apply some of a little bit of analysis to what those meat exports meant to the price of a bushel of corn, instead of a season average annual price of $3.60 a bushel, it had been about $3.15 a bushel, a loss of about 45 cents a bushel, which would have amounted to $6 billion to the corn industry last year. Some cultures, some markets like certain cuts, and they don't like others. And that's where trade really brings a value, because things that are undervalued in the U.S. can be exported to markets where they're valued. We looked at Korea, for example, with MEF's initiative on chilled beef, found that it had 84% increase in chilled beef exports there. Much of that was from the chuck. And if you consider just a third of it from the chuck being the primal cut that represents the most corn use, it's 23 million bushels of corn utilization that were represented by those new exports to Korea. Gross margin for an ethanol mill 2 weeks ago would have been about 62 cents. If you subtract out the value of DDGs, of which meat exports are a big component of the use, and the corn oil, of which feed is also a big component of the use, that margin would have dropped to 12 cents a gallon. About 5 cents of the per bushel margin for an ethanol mill is tied directly to red meat exports. Over the next 10 years, the value of red meat exports to corn is estimated to be about $16.1 billion. 83% of corn is produced by the top 10 states. So if you divide that 16 billion among the top 10 states, even if it's not exactly even, you can see the kind of impact that that's going to have on local economies.
For more information, please visit usmef.org.